Yep. What is he doing in this picture?
And I think we had Carl Cox and Dave Seaman did the first mix. If people are enjoying it, that's not really a problem.
Are there any like new musicians or like new DJs you guys would recommend to listen to in 2022? Yo, what's up? It's me, Sihk. Welcome to SHVR Infinite Coolture, where you can get full access and discover the infinite coolness. Inspiration from stories from around the world, from cultural experts. For the third episode, we have a special guest. But before we start, please like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more podcast episodes. And also, you can listen to our podcast on Spotify. Don't forget to follow SHVR_ID on Instagram to get the newest info about lifestyle and for sure, updates for this podcast. And if you want this cool new merchandise, visit SHVR store on Tokopedia. This brand has been around for 4 decades, which is like double my age. We are wondering how this brand can keep up with the hype in this era. Let's welcome the man, the one and only Nick from Mixmag. Hello, what's up, Nick?
Hey Sihk, how's it going?
Pretty good, how are you?
Very good, thank you. It's an early start here in London, but pleasure to be here.
Nice. Before we get into the questions, just in case some of the viewers aren't really familiar with Mixmag yet, how about you tell us the story of Mixmag?
Sure. Well, it's a big story, but I'll try and summarize it nice and quick for you. So, Mixmag started in the early 80s. Originally, it was a kind of a magazine for DJs that were playing at kind of weddings and discos. I think it was originally called Disco Mixmag. And it was kind of like a fanzine for the kind of touring DJs before the kind of acid house explosion, before the kind of big clubs that we know today. And that evolved, as did dance music, from those early 80s to becoming a clubbing guide and a way of people finding out about dance music and DJs and nightclubs and festivals around the world. So what originally started as a very small, thin magazine grew to become a huge global brand, which now reaches something like 100 million people a month. And we give people information about DJs, dance music, nightlife, and the surrounding culture.
And what was the first thing that kind of ignited that love for like dance music and the whole rave culture around it and the club culture?
Well, for me personally, I mean, there was, growing up in the UK, there's always been dance music around me for someone my age. So the generation before me started the kind of acid house raves that were kind of taking place all around the country, and then we had a kind of change in the law here that kind of made all these kind of parties illegal. And so I was growing up and around the time when there was being a kind of government shutting down these events that were happening all around the country. There was this kind of new way of exploring music and having fun. So when I was growing up, there were legal raves and legal clubs coming about, and we started getting into those as soon as we could get into the clubs and into the raves. So I used to make fake IDs at my school, sell them for £2.50 each to different people, and then we'd go off to different raves around the country. So that was my beginning into dance music for me personally.
So when you're saying like raves back then, just for the audience who are not really like familiar with the rave culture, it was still that system of like, for some raves, you get like a random phone number, you go to like a park, and then you get the instructions to go to the actual rave, right? It's not like a flyer and these big marketing stuff nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. It was a completely illegal activity. So people would find a venue, they'd break in. I mean, a lot of the laws around it were based on, when they were trying to shut them down, it was about laws about trespassing. I think the law that they put in place originally was they couldn't find a way to control it. So they said, okay, anything with a repetitive beat is considered illegal if there's a party that's playing something that's a repetitive beat. So people even started making tunes where the beats weren't quite repetitive. There was a bigger gap between each tune to kind of get around the laws. But yeah, as you say, people would leave messages on answer machines. You would go to petrol stations or to phone boxes. You'd ring up a phone line. They tell you where to meet. Everyone would meet at these, what were called orbital raves at the time, and then they'd find the location and go to these big illegal parties. But this was the start of acid house in the UK, and that's what kind of spread across Europe as well. So even though we were basically using music from the US, so music coming from Detroit and Chicago, in the UK we started this scene of acid house raves, and that's what grew into the club culture we see globally today.
Oh, and like, if you had to compare the electronic music kind of scene back then, comparing it to now where it's just like this gigantic industry, what are some like distinct things that you would, you know, like say like the illegal rave scene to like, you know, the clubs nowadays are like really focused on like table service and all these things, you know?
Well, I mean, you've got to remember, back in those days of the early raves, this was a first, so people weren't even dancing how people dance anymore. People weren't even DJing how people DJ anymore. So things have evolved and things have changed. Some would say for the better. So there's a lot of things in nightlife now that have improved. So the safety around going out, the ability to be able to find parties and actually enjoy them. You know, you couldn't necessarily always guarantee that you'd actually get to a rave or you'd find it. So there are advantages to how nightlife is set up now and how it's become easier to access. But yeah, back in those days, I guess it was really about it being a first and a change in how people would go out and enjoy themselves.
And do these underground raves still happen in the UK? Because like over here in Indonesia, it's kind of like unknown to have these kind of events.
Yeah, they do still happen, thankfully. So there is still an underground scene here in the UK. So it still happens alongside all the other kind of clubs and festivals that take place. There's still a kind of free party scene, we refer to it as, and lots of raves around the country as well. It was something that was happening quite a lot during lockdown as well here in the UK. So there was a lot of people that were told they can't go out, they can't go to clubs anymore because they're closed, and we found that there was a lot more illegal rave activity happening around the country. And for a lot of people, that's the first taste of nightlife for them. It's the first opportunity for them to actually go out and enjoy loud music or a dance event or, you know, dancing with strangers. So there is still a rave scene here, thankfully.
That's awesome. I mean, like, when I was living in the US in Seattle for like 2 years, and like I got to experience that whole underground rave thing, raves under the bridge. In a way, as much as like people would like to think, yeah, these clubs are pushing the culture, in the true essence of dance music, wouldn't you agree that like these underground raves is kind of like what pushes the music forward?
Yeah, I mean, it happens across, I mean, there's so much happening in dance music now that you're absolutely right. To have changes and tweaks of what is accepted and what music comes through, you need people that aren't just trying to sell tickets or aren't trying to sell advertising. So you need to have these kind of events where it's just based on experimental music or experimental fashions or people trying to do something different and new that's not about making money. So yeah, there's always a rave aesthetic or a rave feeling embossed in a lot of what dance music culture is. But as you say, it's very important to have those kind of events still to kind of bring new things and bring new sounds through.
And then that kind of brings us back to 2020, the dreaded year, right? COVID happened, a global pandemic, and then we're all kind of wondering, now what for the electronic music scene? So during this kind of like pandemic state, right? How do you keep up with what's going on in the electronic music scene as a media outlet?
Well, for us, obviously it's very difficult when the clubs are closed. It means that there's less things going on. But actually during COVID, we found, and certainly during lockdown, that there was such a rise in creativity, in people that were finally given the time to be able to produce music or learn to DJ or to make that step into finding out more about dance music that they before didn't have the time to do. So throughout COVID, throughout all the lockdowns globally, we found there were so many artists and DJs that were making incredible music or fine-tuning their skills or working out how they were going to come back faster and harder and stronger than before. So obviously for a media outlet like ourselves, it meant that we weren't able to talk about the clubs and the festivals that were happening because they weren't. But it meant that there was a need for information for people to find out what was happening, when they were going to be able to come back to clubs, when they would be able to go back to festivals, what's happening in Ibiza, what's happening in Vegas, how do we get back to clubs, how do we do it safely? So you needed a voice that was kind of respected and that knew that it was fact-checking and had the authority to investigate what was going on globally and give the information back to people about how soon we can go back to clubbing and how soon nightlife can regrow. So I think Mixmag had that role during COVID. And along with the kind of music and the creativity side as well, there was a lot of activity that was based around good and people trying to make a difference and charitable organisations. So there was so much happening in terms of raising money, raising awareness, making sure people were using music for good. So there was so many things to report on in that spirit as well. So it was great to be able to see all these enterprises happening globally where people were trying to make things better for first responders, for NHS staff, for people that were working in hospitals and people that were working in vaccination centres. So a lot of charitable good that we could help put a spotlight onto, which was really important.
And just out of curiosity, what's the situation over there in the UK right now when it comes to like live shows and all that?
So there are live shows, there are festivals, there are clubs now. You have to show that you've been double jabbed or you've had COVID in the last 6 months or you've got a negative test. The UK is really hot on testing, so everyone tests pretty much weekly or daily, depending on where you work. The positive thing I suppose that you could take from it, and there's a lot of negatives from COVID for the industry specifically, but there are events now that are selling out straight away because there's this need for people to want to go out.
Yeah, people have been stuck in their house for like a year, right?
Yeah, and we worked out there's over 1 million new 18-year-olds just in the UK that had never been to a club before. So as soon as big festivals like Parklife went on sale, they sold out straight away, or Creamfields the same, because there was a whole generation of people that had been reading about wanting to go to clubs legally or festivals for their whole life as they're growing up. Just as they got to 18, they were locked down. So what we've seen this year is a real rise in how these big events have sold out. And so people like Warehouse Project as well in the UK and Printworks doing phenomenally great business and doing really good ticket sales because people just want to get back out there. I mean, even Printworks, I think when their first adverts came out, they redacted the headliners. So it was the first time we saw huge billboards in London for clubs where you didn't even know who was DJing.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of happening all over the world. I mean, here in Indonesia, it's kind of starting to open up a little bit. I mean, you're not allowed to have like too many people in a club yet, but there is that urge, you know, as soon as like everyone's kind of over the whole paranoia, I would say, like, you know, you got vaccinated, you can go out, right? I mean, there is still that risk, but then a lot of people are super paranoid, but as soon as that's kind of over all over the world, I have a feeling like everyone just wants to party, you know?
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of, I mean, there's mixed opinions, of course, and it's always a divider in whatever group you're in, but I think there's always going to be people that are just so keen to go back out there. They're just waiting to find the safest way to do it so they can get back out there. Yeah, I mean, and I've talked about the UK and, specifically in England is what I've been talking about, but I think laws are slightly different in Scotland and in Wales as well. So even within the UK, there's differences of opinion among local governments about what is the safe way of going out. So it's going to take us a while, but I think gradually we are getting back there.
Yeah, that's really interesting, I guess, how the world is shifting. By the way, please like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more podcast episodes. And also, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify. Don't forget to follow SHVR_ID on Instagram to get the newest info about lifestyle and for sure, updates for this podcast. And if you want this cool merchandise, visit SHVR store on Tokopedia. All right, let's get to the next point that I really want to know. A lot of like print magazines, because Mixmag started as a magazine and now it's more towards like the online kind of website and news articles. How did you like survive that transformation from, a print magazine into like the online digital world?
I think any business has to adapt, and Mixmag has for a long time was built about the fact it was a print magazine, and I think in its peak it sold maybe 100,000 issues a month. That was in like 2000 or 2001. So to go from 100,000 readers of the print magazine, it's kind of, with a magazine you've got one-way traffic, which is you're kind of saying exactly what things are. There's not really much of a right to apply. It's a one-way system. Whereas we knew around 2000, 2001 that we needed to adapt to make the business digital. So that's when we launched Mixmag.net. And since then, the growth of social media as well, which means that now we reach 100 million people a month, which means that although we don't have that print magazine anymore at the moment, we do still reach way more people globally. So we just have to change the shape of the business, because that's how the shape of media has changed. That's, I'm sure, Sihk, how you read about what's going on in the world. It's through your mobile phone or through your desktop, and it's the same for Mixmag as well. So although we may bring the magazine back in the future, we're talking about maybe doing something special next year. Maybe we'll do a couple of issues around IMS or ADE. I think for now, in terms of the global reach we can get, it's all about having a huge digital presence. And the beauty of that is it's always on. So Mixmag, I'm here in the London office at the moment, but we've got 16 offices around the world, which means that there's always someone creating content around dance music specifically to different regions in different languages as well. So it's not just about having a fixed product anymore, it's about having something that is constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly updated. So it just means that we're able to give more information to more people all the time.
And like, so back then when it was still a printed magazine, right? Being on the magazine cover for a musician, it's like a gigantic like milestone, like being, you know, it's basically your superstar, right?
It's a huge deal. I think one of the benefits of us moving to digital actually is we've started doing digital covers now. So instead of every month doing a cover, we now do one every 2 weeks where we shoot the cover, we get a feature from the artist and they do us a mix as well, which means that instead of having only 12 covers a year, now we've got 24, which means we can just showcase even more talent. And one of the benefits of being the market leader like Mixmag is we don't have to rely on big names. We can kind of use our platform to showcase new up and coming talent as well. So a lot of what our covers are about now is showcasing new music, new artists, new producers, new DJs to do more with the platform that we've got to kind of push things forward a little bit more than just relying on kind of big name DJs, I suppose.
So who's like the most iconic artist that's been your cover of your magazine or even on a feature?
Wow, I mean, in terms of icon, I mean, there's so many because Mixmag's been around for nearly 40 years, so we've done 38 years of monthly covers. I'm sure someone could do the maths quicker than me. For me personally, I suppose when it comes to icons, I don't think there's anyone bigger than Daft Punk. They've been on Mixmag's cover 6 times, which is, I think it's a record. I don't think anyone else has been on the cover more than those guys. And obviously now the fact that as an act they're no more, it makes them even bigger enigma than they were when they were around. So I'd say for me, Daft Punk have always been one of the most iconic acts that we've covered. And I mean, Mixmag covered them before they were robots. So one of the first covers they did with us was when they were still wearing like paper mache masks before they turned into the kind of robots that everyone knows them as today. So I suppose as far as icons go, they've got to be the biggest.
What year was that when they weren't robots yet?
Oh, so let me think. That must have been 96 or 97. So when Discovery came out.
I was like 2 years.
No, not when Discovery came out. Sorry, when Homework came out. So I think that was 96 or 97.
Wow, yeah. Like I was 2 years old, so I mean, I knew about Daft Punk when I was like in the 2nd grade, just because of my brother. But I feel like that whole like masked DJ thing, it kind of blew up after them in a way, right? Like Deadmau5 started doing it, and then nowadays you got Marshmello, and
yeah, I mean, they set so many standards of what dance music is today, it's unbelievable. So when they did their Pyramid show around, I guess it was 2006, when they did their live tour, that was the first time that you saw an act using these kind of big video walls and big LED walls. And before that, it was mainly just DJs playing on a set of 1210s or a set of CDJs. So they changed the shape of how dance music is. They changed the shape of how live shows are. They changed the shape of how people record music. They were such pioneers in this world. They are, yeah. I'm a huge fan, as I'm sure you can tell, as I'm gushing away.
So other than Daft Punk, right? Who else would you say had like a seminal moment in like dance music history?
Oh, wow. I mean, there's so many. I mean, there's I suppose it depends as well, the amount of genres you can talk about. So within dance music, you've got people from house, people from techno, people from drum and bass. There's a plethora of genres and people within those individual scenes that make huge marks, that push things forward. So it'd be very difficult to pick one out in terms of someone that is one of those pioneers because there are so many. But I think, if you go through the back catalogue of Mixmag's covers, which you can find online, there's pretty much every single element of the last 40 years of dance music has been documented by us. So it's a great resource of finding out exactly these key moments in dance music through the 80s, 90s, noughties and beyond.
And when you say there's like a lot of Mixmag, actually Mixmag has been like kind of expanding, not just in the UK, you have Mixmag Asia now, Mixmag Brazil, just to name a few. Like how did you guys figure out how to localize your brand in so many like different locations,
I think it was a realization that we're making amazing content here in the UK office, and actually there was a lot of people around the world that would probably want to find the same information themselves, but maybe it's more localized. So we took the concept of Mixmag and we've launched it as originally it was a license in Brazil. So you mentioned Mixmag Brazil. So there's guys down in Sao Paulo that take our content, they translate it into Portuguese, they add their own content, they put on their own parties. And it worked so well, we just kept on doing it. So now there's Mixmag in Japan, there's a Mixmag in Korea, there's a Mixmag in China. As you mentioned, there's Mixmag Asia. We've just set up a new office in Mumbai, so we're about to start doing live streams in Goa this month. So there's lots of Mixmags happening, and it's like I say, it's using the information and the content and the resources and the relationships that Mixmag's built over all these years, and making sure that more people around the world can access this information and find out just as much about where are the best places to go and who are the best DJs to listen to, where are the best producers, what are the best albums, and not just through the lens of a London or a UK office, but through something that's more localized to different markets and different territories.
You mentioned that you are doing more like live streams, right? Like, how do you feel about basically the whole industry is almost boxed into like this internet, culture, from us doing shows in clubs and festivals, and then now we're kind of just doing live streams on Twitch, on YouTube. Like, how do you personally feel about that? Does it take away, the life of the music in a way, just because you're not in a big crowd anymore?
I think it complements it. I think it's the best way of putting it. I think if there's something really historic or something amazing musically happening and it's only the 400 people in the room that can hear it or experience it, obviously that's exciting for those people, but it just means that there are millions of people out there that would love to hear what that set was or love to try and find a way of experiencing it. So I think it's making music more accessible, it's making nightlife more accessible to people around the world that maybe they can't afford to go clubbing every week, or maybe they can't afford to go to every festival that they'd love to go to, but there's no reason why they should miss out on the music that's being played, or the acts that are being broken, or the remixes that are getting spun. So I think it means that more people can get into dance music as well. So I think it's a very good thing. Here at Mixmag, we've been doing a show called The Lab for 10 years. And every week in the space I'm sitting in now, we turn our office into a nightclub, and we have a different DJ come and play. And it's a great experience because it just means, again, we get to showcase more music. So every week we get someone else that comes in, plays a different genre. We get a small audience to come to watch. So there's maybe 100, 120 people here. But it means that around the world, rather than there just being 100 people experiencing it, you've got millions. So it just means that people get more access to the music. They can discover more. They can hear something that they want to play in their own set. They can see something or new trends that are happening in different parts of the world. So I think it is a really great thing to happen. I mean, you could compare it to how sport was. I mean, back in the day before sport was televised, you just have to be in the stadium itself to watch the games. But now you've got sport televised around the world. You don't question the fact that we can all enjoy the World Cup or the Euros or whatever else, or name your sport. So I think it's a great way of people discovering music and probably getting into it early as well. So there's, for the people that aren't above legal drinking age or aren't over 18 or 21 or whatever you've got to be, you still want to hear dance music. I'm sure, Sihk, like me, you were enjoying dance music when you were a young teenager, way before you could get into the clubs. Yeah. So it just gives people that access. Yeah.
But like, how about like the shift in the communities in a way, like, and the rising DJs, like you said, like there's a lot of DJs because of the pandemic. A lot of more people are kind of shining through what the masses couldn't see before, just because a lot of more people are like exploring online, and then you get like small artists just blowing up. How do you feel about that, like the current state of it?
I think it's really important actually, because I think dance music for a long time was a very difficult, very expensive process. To be able to cut vinyl, it costs a lot of money and a lot of expertise. And what's happened over the last few years is that people have been able to get the tools to make their own music, to create their own clubs, to create their own collectives. And it just means that it's made dance music more accessible to people, and also the joy and the creativity that you can have in making dance music and then playing your own tune out and getting your own crowd and watching your own friends dancing to music that you've made isn't something that should just be done by the top elite A-list DJs. It's something that everyone's got access to do now. You can make music on your phone, you can make it on your laptop, you can upload it to your SoundCloud, and then you can get it downloaded around the world. So it just means that more people are able to access this as a creative outlet, as a hobby, and it means that it's a fun way of getting into dance music. Rather than it just being a spectator sport, it means that you can be it yourself. You can become the DJ now, which is why there's so much great dance music now as well. But also, it just means that there is a huge increase in the amount of content that's being made, which means that having a media platform like Mixmag is still very useful, because it helps sometimes to have someone picking out of all this new stuff that's being made, what are the kind of new labels, or what are the new producers, or who are the kind of people we should be listening to, what's the new kind of sounds that are coming through. So it means the job as a curator or a media company like Mixmag becomes even more important.
All right, hold up guys. Before we continue this podcast, please like, comment, and subscribe. Actually, smash that subscribe button. And also, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify. Don't forget to follow SHVR_ID on Instagram to get the newest info about lifestyle and for sure updates for this podcast. And if you want this cool merchandise, visit SHVR store on Tokopedia. How about like, as a media company, do you notice there's like somewhat of an oversaturation of a certain genre because, you know, of like the online culture now, like where everyone can learn how to make dance music, everyone can put out dance music?
I think there'd only be an oversaturation of a sound if there's not enough people listening to it. So if when EDM became big and, you know, there was huge new shows and huge new DJs, but there were huge crowds enjoying it. So, you know, even though there was a lot of homogenized sounds and a lot of similar effects and similar drops coming through, if people are enjoying it, that's not really a problem. I mean, you've got to always have an entry point for different types of music, and for dance music, that was what EDM was. It was a new way to get new people into the sound. So, for all the snobbiness that there might have been about, oh, it's, you know, maybe it's a bit too basic, or maybe it's, you know, it's for younger people. That's not a problem, because you need younger people to come to events. You need younger people to enjoy dance music. We say, well, I've said before, not everyone is born a techno or Richie Hawtin fan. You need a kind of access point to the music. For me, back in the day, that was kind of happy hardcore, which is way worse than EDM is now.
I love happy hardcore, man. Yeah, that's why I produce.
Oh, amazing. Well, exactly. I mean, so if you need to have an entry point, you need to have something that is accessible to people, because otherwise you're just going to shut new people off. And I think the lifeblood of dance music and nightlife is the fact that there's always going to be a new generation of 18-year-olds that are interested in what we're doing.
All right, before we move on, I just want to clarify, when you say EDM, because in different places, like, people kind of consider EDM different things, right? I feel like in Europe, when people say EDM, they kind of mean that big room house sound. And then, like, over here in Asia, EDM is basically everything, like from drum and bass to techno.
Yeah, there's a little loss in translation there. So I think, yeah, globally, I think a lot of people, when they refer to EDM, they're talking about the whole of dance music, literally electronic dance music. I think maybe here in Europe, where we've maybe a little bit snobbier about it, we've referred to EDM as more the kind of stadium electro house sound, which, you know, is common with like your Steve Aokis and Layback Lukes and all that type. Yeah. So yeah, I think in Europe we tend to refer to it as dance music. In maybe Asia and the US as well, it's become kind of EDM. But yeah, these are kind of different ways of people talking about the same thing, I suppose.
And what do you think the next big genre is going to be? Because, like, what year was it? 2013, 2014, when, like, Martin Garrix released Animals and, like, that genre was the big thing? I forgot what year that was.
Couldn't put a date on it. I mean, maybe it's the 2010s, isn't it? But
2010s,
I think, yeah. In terms of the next sound that's coming through, I mean, that's the beauty of the growth of production and the growth of people. So many more people becoming DJs now, is that it's moving at such a fast rate, and no one's following any rules anymore. So you don't have to have people just going, I'm going to make house or I'm going to make techno. People are just doing what they want. They're recording their own sounds. They're using their phones to make remixes. So people, the idea of fitting into genres or fitting into pigeonholes is kind of lost a little bit now, because people will find an audience for anything now. You can upload whatever you want to your SoundCloud or Mixcloud or whatever, and there's going to be someone that's into it and likes it and listens to it and asks to hear more. So it's a great way that dance music's evolved in that way, to go beyond these kind of rigid genres, and now it's just a free roaming sound.
Yeah, and like with the fast cycles, right? How do you find like the next big artist? Like, as a media outlet, you would generally know, like have a vibe, like a feeling like, oh, this artist is about to blow up? How do you usually know about that? How do you be the first one to find that artist?
Well, I suppose we're in quite a privileged position that a lot of people send us their music, so a lot of stuff comes directly to Mixmag before it's released, which we listen to endlessly. We've got a big team here in London, and like I mentioned, around the world as well, where we have so many producers and DJs that want to get stuff to us early, that want to know what we think of things. So we get a kind of idea of what's going on. And we're not the only people that would consider ourselves tastemakers. We listen to lots of different radio shows and mixes, and there's lots of different ways of fine-tuning the kind of that wealth of information, that music that's coming through to us. So it's a mix of listening to lots of stuff, judging things by going out and actually seeing the reactions of what people are listening to and what they're reacting to, and just having people's own personal opinions as well, because the people that work at Mixmag all are very passionate about what we do, and they take this kind of thing very seriously in terms of wanting to spotlight those kind of new sounds and those new artists that are coming through.
Out of curiosity, how many demos do you guys get in a day?
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want to put a number on it, but there's so much that comes through. It's very difficult to listen to everything in a day if you're listening to music all day long. So you do have to be relatively, I don't want to say selective, but organized, let's say.
Okay. And are there any like new musicians or like new DJs you guys would recommend to listen to in 2022?
I mean, there's lots of music that's coming through that we're always showcasing throughout Mixmag's output. So, I mean, for me personally, there's a guy called Wheats who's a great techno DJ who's been playing a lot of big shows recently here in the UK. In terms of stuff that's coming out next year, I mean, there's so much incredible music. To pick out one thing, I'd say Alice Glass, who used to be part of Crystal Castles, she's got a new album in January next year, so January 22. So that's probably going to be one worth checking out. But yeah, I mean, there is so much. It's very difficult to pick out certain people. So I feel bad even mentioning those two names.
Yeah, like have you heard of this Indonesian DJ Blue Claire?
No.
You should check him out. He's kind of like, I don't know, he's been kind of labeled the future of house music in a lot of like outlets like EDM.com and those blog type websites. But he's doing...
I'm sure even though I might not have heard of him myself, I'm sure a lot of my team will have, and they'll be berating me for not saying that I know him. So yeah, I'll definitely check that out when we get off the podcast.
All right, guys, we're about to reach the final section of this interview. Please like, comment, and press that subscribe button to our YouTube channel for more podcast episodes. And also, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify. Don't forget to follow SHVR_ID on Instagram to get the newest info about lifestyle and for sure updates for this podcast. And if you want this cool merchandise, visit SHVR store on Tokopedia. All right, so now we are in the game section where it's kind of like a thunder question round. Where I just show you pictures and then you kind of tell me a little bit about it. All right, the first picture, this is like my favorite picture. So I got right here a picture of Carl Cox.
I recognize that man.
Yep. What is he doing in this picture? It's a video that you guys uploaded.
Yeah, so during lockdown, we spoke to some of our favorite DJs and we asked them to make videos to help people during lockdown. So we got Honey Dijon talking about her favorite books. We had Nastia talking about her favorite film soundtracks. And that is a still from Carl Cox, who is showing us how to make his famous shepherd's pie. So this was Carl Cox, the chef. I encourage anyone to go and watch it because it is a great recipe. I think he says something along the lines of never trust a thin chef, or words to that effect. But yeah, so it's a great way of seeing a snapshot of Carl's life. He lives down in Melbourne, in Australia. But yeah, he gave us a great recipe for shepherd's pie.
It's actually interesting. Like, I think not a lot of people know Carl Cox lives in Australia.
Yeah, for the majority of the time, I think he just loves it down there. He's massively into motorbikes. He does a lot of, he's got his own motorbike team. And yeah, he's a keen cook. He's done all those he did all those lockdown shows, those, he was doing so many mixes during lockdown, but he's got a studio down there. So yeah, very prolific.
All right, next question. So I got a little picture of this man. Do you know who this man is?
Is that Bonobo?
Exactly. What is the name of his next album?
Oh, it's like a weird, is it Otoma or Otoma? Something like that?
Is it? Is it? It is.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
All right. Third question. When you guys had a record label, well, you guys still run a record label. Maybe I should rephrase that question. When was the time you started a record label?
So Mixmag started a record label in the early 90s. It's probably about, I reckon it was about 93 or 94. And actually we made the first ever legal mix CD. So before then, there were mixtapes, there were mix CDs, recorded at raves, but we were the first people to make a CD that was dance music, that the people that mixed it and the music on it, the rights were all cleared, so everyone got paid fairly. So technically, Mixmag invented the mix CD.
So before Mixmag did this, there was no mix CDs?
There were CDs with tunes on, that, but nothing with dance music on that would flowed through the mix, so they would stop between tunes. So I think we were the first people to go, let's make sure that you can hear a mix continuously and we'll pay the rights holders for all the music that's used. So it was the first time people could get a taste of what was going on in the raves and clubs on a CD, because before that was a lot of cassettes going around. Do you even know what a cassette is, Sihk?
I do. I had cassettes, but only like a short period of my life. After that was CDs, and then after that was MP3s.
Yeah. So the first CDs we made, they were called Mixmag Live, and I think we had Carl Cox and Dave Seaman did the first mix.
Next question number 4. When was the first edition of Mixmag launched? I got a picture of the first.
Well, 1983. I think it was. It might be in February 1983. I know the cover was Shalimar, and like I mentioned earlier, so this was back in the days when Mixmag was kind of like a disco Mixmag, which was for kind of roaming disco DJs or wedding DJs that would travel around the UK.
We couldn't find like the first cover of Mixmag, but we did find the first cover that we can like go back to and find. But this was 1994.
I think, Sihk, you actually just showed me on the last slide, that was the first, Shalimar was the first cover. You'd think you just had it.
Oh.
The slide you showed me before. Yeah, yeah.
So this is actually the first cover?
That's the first cover, yeah.
Okay. And fun fact, I did a little research. So apparently Mixmag used to ship out the magazines with little cassettes taped to it.
I'm sure we have done cassettes back in the day. So before we started doing CDs, yeah, I'm sure we would have done cassettes. We also used to do, you could cut out a kind of cassette inlay for if you'd recorded an essential mix accidentally. You used to have to say accidentally because I think it was illegal in the UK to record stuff off the radio and then promote it for whatever reason. So we used to make the inlays of cassettes with the kind of track listing. So it was the very first kind of track ID service, I suppose. Interesting.
Question, this is the last question, by the way. Based on the article in 2015, there are 20 women who shaped the history of dance music. If you could add one more person, who would it be?
Wow, I mean, I remember that article very well because it's a very thorough list and there's 20 incredible women on that list. So it's very hard for me to find someone that isn't on the list. So it's gonna have to be someone a bit more modern day. So I'm gonna suggest Mack, who obviously has been a huge tastemaker in the UK. She has shaped how modern day dance music is received and enjoyed, not just here in the UK, but around the world. Her Radio 1 show recently finished. It finished this year, but she's been the voice of a nation for a long time here. So it's, I'd have to put Mack onto that list if she's not there already. I have to double check if she's not already there.
All right, well, that was everything for today. And thank you so much for joining us. And SHVRians, if you are watching this, don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You have any last things you want to say before we log off?
No, Sihk, I just want to say what a pleasure it's been chatting to you, and I'm looking forward to checking out the rest of the podcast series as well.
All right, SHVRians, that's the end of the episode. Thank you so much, Mixmag, for today, and thank you, SHVR. So again, don't forget to like, comment, and smash that subscribe button to our YouTube channel. And you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify after you watch this episode and you want to listen to it again. And yeah, if you want this cool merchandise, don't forget to visit SHVR store on Tokopedia. Sihk is signing out.
Higher.